Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry about that. We accidentally closed out the webinar. Looks like most people have gotten back on though. My name is Katie Williams, and I'm here with my colleague, Susanna Horton, and we're in the Division of Data Accountability and Research. We're going to give people one more minute to get logged back in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Katie Williams, and I'm with the Division of Data Accountability and Research, and I'm here with my colleague, Susanna Horton. And today we're going to be talking to you about the Access for ELLs 2.0 and preparation for the online administration. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to enter them into the question panel, and we're going to pause periodically to address questions. And then also, just so you know, today's presentation is being recorded, and we are going to publish this on the OSSI website along with the presentation. So if any of your colleagues missed it, you'll definitely have an opportunity to listen to this again. So with that, I'm going to pass over presentation to my colleague Susanna, and she is going to take it from here.
All right. Hello and good afternoon, everyone. So let's just jump right in. And first, so today, as Katie mentioned, the point of this webinar is to make sure that all LEAs are connected to the appropriate preparation resources so that you can all successfully administer the Access for ELLs 2.0. And so today we're going to review the key features and changes to the online-based assessment, learn some great tips for how to best prepare for online administration, and then actually go on to the WIDA website and walk you through some of the resources that are there. And so first we're going to go over some background information on key features of the test and what's new, what it means to have an online test. And then we will go over the available preparation resources on the WIDA Access for ELLs 2.0 webpage. And then at the end, we are also going to go over tips and best practices for how to best prepare and what's most important to know. Okay, so jumping right in, an overview of the online test. As most of you did attend a previous webinar, this is just going to be very brief. So as you know, the Access for ELLs 2.0 is now offered online for students in grades 1 through 12. And the listening and speaking test will be media delivered instead of by the person administering the test. The speaking test includes an all-new voice recording design, and this allows the test to be group administered, so it's not just a one-on-one experience. And the online speaking test will now be scored centrally at the Data Recognition Corporation and not by the test administrators. And then finally, the online delivery enables WIDA to build additional accessibility features that weren't available with the paper-based test. Okay, so a quick what's new. With the online version of the Access for ELLs 2.0, the order of administration for each section domain is important. Because it is an online test, the level that is given to the students depends on the score on the previous section. So the order of administration will start with the listening test, then the reading test, and then either the speaking or the writing test. Those can go in either order. The next new thing with the Access for ELLs 2.0 is a new structure for the grade level clusters. And so the online grade clusters now groups grades 2 and 3 together. You'll see that the Access for ELLs 2.0 paper version still has grades 2 and 3 separately. And WIDA will be in the future as we move to using the online version, making those grade level clusters align the same. And also note, as mentioned in the last slide, that the new test vendor is Data Recognition Corp, DRC. It's no longer Metrotech, and so they will be doing all of the scoring and analysis. Okay, so now for a closer look on the online versus the paper test, and we'll look at it by each domain. You'll see here that for the online test, it's important to look the listening section. It's all on the computer screen. And the student responses are also captured on the computer screen. And then looking at the reading section, also based on the computer screen. Both of those domains are pretty straightforward. I'll give you a few minutes to take a look at this chart and feel free to type any questions you might have. All right, and then for the speaking and writing domains, these are a little bit different, so I'm going to walk through them in a bit more detail. So for the speaking domain, the new Access for ELLs 2.0 online version has the capability to capture students' speaking responses. And so because of this, you'll see the note at the bottom of the screen. It is important to have headphones with built-in microphones. That's required to capture the speaking component. And with the paper-based test, the speaking is administered with a CD by the test administrator, so it's not the test administrator actually speaking to the student.
Yeah, and if I could just add there, for the speaking, the scores are captured by the computer, by the software, and sent away for electronic scoring by DRC, whereas for the speaking on the paper, the test administrator actually had to score the student during speech, the administration.
Okay, and then for the writing section, this is where the breakdown is different for each grade level. And so if we look here, for grades 1 through 3, students will actually be writing on a paper test form, and even if they take the rest of the test online. For grades 4 through 12, they will be writing on the computer screen, but they also have the option to take it on the paper test form. And so this is up to each individual LEA to decide how they want students in grade 4 through 12 to do that part. And then for grades 6 through 12, the automatic is writing keyboard responses, and it is the expectation that most all students in grades 6 through 12 will use keyboard to respond to questions, unless the student has a special accommodation or needs to write on paper or doesn't have familiarity with a computer. And all of the responses are captured on the computer for the writing section.
So I'm going to pause and answer some questions. So the first one, does that mean the student directly speaks into the microphone? That is correct. The student would speak directly into the microphone, and it would be recorded by the software, and once the test is submitted, that is submitted with the test. And then the second question was, is the ALT assessment also on the computer? Great question. No, the ALT assessment is not on the computer. It's still paper-based. Additionally, the kindergarten assessment is still paper-based. This is only for the assessment for students in grades 1 through 12. All right, how does the everything. Okay, how does the scribe accommodation fit? And so we're going to, there's a whole accommodations guide that we're going to point you to, and we're also going to cover a bit about accommodations later in the presentation, so we'll get to that. What about adult ed students? Students between the grades of K and 12 need to take the Access for ELLs. If you're an adult set program that doesn't administer the Access, this is not relevant for you. Great question. Will all students be completing the speaking portion at the same time in a group setting? So we're actually going to cover that a little bit later. You can administer in a group setting, but there is a recommendation for how many students should be in the group at one time, just considering everyone is going to be speaking and you don't want microphones catching other people's speech, and you don't want students to be distracted by what another student is saying. If the writing section is typed, how will that affect the time limit? And some students, while familiar with keyboards, are still very slow. We're also covering the time limits later in the webinar, but this, is still an untimed test. So if our school does not have the technology for 2.0, can we still use the paper version? No, all of the technology requirements have been aligned to the technology requirements of the park administration, so there shouldn't be any schools that aren't technologically prepared for this assessment. If you're concerned about your preparation from a technological aspect, there are resources that we are going to point you to now, and we, by the end of today, would like to have the contact information for your technology coordinator so we can make sure that doesn't, happen, that someone is unprepared for the Access for ELLs 2.0. Another question, does OSSI provide the headphones? No, those need to be, acquired by the LEA. That's not something that OSSI is providing. Another question, will there be an alternate Access for Test 2.0? For the foreseeable future, we don't anticipate that there will be an alternate version, but I know that they're constantly developing these assessment series, so I can't say that it's never going to happen. All right, we're going to continue. Thank you.
Okay. And then just a bit more detail about what the actual writing section looks like on the online format. So you'll see here that students will see a picture and text that models the type of answer that's expected. They will also hear an audio prompt and read the directions, and then in the text box they can enter their response using the keyboard. And the test engine will save the student responses and then automatically send them to DRC. Note also that some questions or responses will be longer, and so students will be able to scroll up and down on the screen. And then a few notes about the online platform and what students have access to and what it will be like for students to use it. So the actual test, it is narrated and guided introduction by a human voice for each test domain. There are thematic folders pertaining to a unified theme for each domain. There are also practice items, and on this point we really do stress as you're gearing up for the test to encourage students to use those practice items so they can familiarize themselves with what the online test platform looks like. There are also modeled responses there, and the interface is simple and uncluttered, so it's easy for students to use. And then we'll get into this in further detail later, but there's also accessibility features in the online platform, and all students will have access to them, such as magnification or a highlighter, cut and paste properties, copy, and underlining.
I see some questions coming in, but I think everything I've seen so far will be answered throughout the course of the webinar. So if you could just hold these until the end and circle back and ask again if we get to the end and you still feel like we haven't answered the questions.
All right. And so now we're going to look at some of the great preparation resources that are available on the WIDA website. First, I'll give you an overview, and then we're actually going to go onto the website and walk you through where to find them. Okay, so this is just a quick picture of what the Access for ELLs 2.0 WIDA website looks like. There you can find training modules, technology requirements, facilitator toolkits, FAQ documents, a link to the WIDA AMS, which we will be detailing later how that can be of use to you, training modules for test facilitators and administrators. All right, and also we'll get into this in more detail later, but note that there is a large section on the website with guidelines, FAQs, and booklets on the accessibility and accommodations for the Access 2.0 because they will be very different using the online platform. And then, as I mentioned, there's also access to WIDA AMS. So this is where you can find sample test items and test demos. And access to WIDA AMS will be granted to all test coordinators, test administrators, and technology coordinators. And those will be sent out in the next month or so as we work with WIDA to coordinate getting everyone's usernames uploaded. And then eventually all students will be loaded into the WIDA AMS system, whether they are taking the online or the paper test.
Right, and that won't happen until February when we collect your rosters and verify rosters. But the WIDA AMS, like Susanna was saying, is where you'll find the test demo and the sample items, and you don't need a login to access this information. We'll actually show you what that looks like then. And then another question that we'll hopefully answer in the next slide, or a few.
And just another quick note that students may be unfamiliar with responding and recording their speech into a microphone. Once the software is installed and the online test has interactive test practice, as we mentioned, we do strongly encourage you to give students ample opportunity to practice both using the online interface and using the headset and microphone before taking the test. Okay, and now we're going to dig into some of the test administration preparation tools you can find on the WIDA website. Okay, so the test administration timeline, just to take a quick look at what that looks like here. These are the important dates. The test window is in April. I'm just going to leave this up here for everyone to take a quick look at, and I will show you where to find this on the WIDA US website. Sorry, one moment. Okay, sorry about that. We have a few more slides before we actually go to the website. All right. So now just a quick overview so everyone is clear for who takes the Access for ELLs 2.0. So they will be all students in grades K through 12 who have been identified as an English learner according to an OSCE approval EL screener.
And just to clarify, all students take the Access for ELLs 2.0, only some of those will take it online.
And all first grade students who took the kindergarten WIDA Access placement test in kindergarten and score fluent English speaker proficiency level, and then all English learners who opt out of services according to the Department of Education guidance. Okay, so these are the 3 important roles that each LEA will have in administering the test. So first you'll have test coordinators, and they are responsible for setting up user accounts for training and testing and complete all trainings. And they're also responsible for ensuring that test administrators and technology coordinators complete all of the applicable training components.
And to be clear, that should be all of you. That would be the LEA level English language learner coordinators, who are our primary audience that we're communicating with you directly, and then, you know, it's your responsibility to fill the test coordinator role from the LEA level.
Okay, and then you will have test administrators. They will be responsible for completing all of the relevant trainings, and those trainings will include web-based modules, checklists, and quizzes. They also will need to be reading applicable test administration manuals prior to administering the test. And then finally, the technology coordinators. They are going to be the ones directly communicating with DRC, and they will prepare technical systems for the online testing after they complete the training checklists and web-based modules, and including installing the software.
Solid question. Will the online test affect how scores are made available? With the new test, will scores be made available online? And just to come back here to the timeline, the LEAs will receive printed and online reports as of August 5th, excuse me, assuming that all the other deadlines have been met.
Okay, and now for each of those roles, we're going to talk a bit about what the training requirements are. And so you'll see here in this table, it's broken down by grade level. So note that for kindergarten, because they won't be taking the online test, there's just going to be a test administrator with a web-based training and checklist. But you'll also see that for grades 1 through 12, both paper and online, there's a series of web-based trainings and checklists, and there's also quizzes. So for the test administrators, they must pass all the web-based quizzes with a score of 80% or higher. And once those quizzes are taken and scores are provided, the training certificates are on the WIDA website portal, will be updated, and we're requesting that you can print those and include them in your binder. All of the checklists need to be completed and included in the test administration binder, and all test administrators must complete the test administrator training, and the training must be complete by the start of the test window. And note that the test coordinator, which will be all of you, is responsible for making sure that all of your LEA and school site test administrators and technology coordinators complete their individual checklists and trainings.
Right. For the alt assessment, if you would follow the guidance for the grades 1 through 12 paper, your requirements would be exactly the same as they have been. And then the question was, do we need to recertify with taking the quizzes again? And yes, you will, because you do need to retake the quizzes even if you've been certified in the past, because of the new online platform and the extent to which things have changed this year.
Okay, now we're going to jump onto the website and show you where all of those great resources live. We will also show you what the checklists look like and what you'll be doing your trainings on. Okay. So here's the main Access for ELLs 2.0 webpage. If you go to the main WIDA webpage, let's see, I'll take you home here, and you can find it by going to Assessment and then Access for ELLs 2.0. That will bring you here. And this is a great page just for an overview about the Access for ELLs 2.0. Here you can scan through the What's New page. It updates with anything WIDA has updated, and basically what we went over today, background on the Access for ELLs. You can also find details about what the scores and reports will look like. WIDA also updates with new documents here as they come out with anything new. And then, so back to this main About page here is where you'll find the most helpful resources. Mostly here in this Preparation Resources link. If you click it, it will take you to this page. And you'll see here there is a long table with many resources for your preparation. And a good way to filter through this is if you are a test coordinator, you can see everything that applies to you by clicking on the Test Coordinator button. And then you'll find the toolkits, the checklist, and the trainings all here. And so, for example, if we go to the Test Coordinator checklist for the online test, and it will take you to a login. You should all have WIDA.us logins at this point. And then this is what a test coordinator checklist would look like. And so as you're preparing, you will start at the top, and it also helps you go through with a timeline. So if you're looking at it and it seems like there's a lot to get done, it's staged, and so there's things for this fall which you can begin working on now, and then it also moves through things prior to the test as you approach the test window. And so these are all of the trainings and the manuals that you should be reading through, and it is required before test administration begins that each test coordinator, test administrator, and technology coordinator completes the checklists. And so now going back to the WIDA page and preparation resources. This is also, as we mentioned earlier, where you can find the booklets about accommodations and accessibility, and there's right here at the top where you can find all of the guidelines, and any questions you might have will probably be answered in there. And then another important place on the website is this technology link here. And so this details all of the technology requirements which each LEA should already have. As Katie mentioned, they align with PARC. And it also, if you need more detail, there are PDF documents with those details as well.
And then there's also a PDF that shows recommendations for headset specifications. That is very helpful also. Okay, we're going to pause for questions here. Is the kindergarten test still paper-based? Yes, it is. The kindergarten test is still paper-based. Can test delivery speed be adjusted to slow, medium, or fast? No, I do not believe it can, even as an accommodation. I think the option is to have directions repeated once, but I don't believe it can be sped up. I would review the accommodations guide to confirm that, though. Yes, either laptops or desktops can be used as long as they meet the technology requirements. that's definitely true, and I would recommend like installing the software as early as possible to test out to make sure it's all working smoothly on whatever devices you're using. There's a very specific question for the online test. Is testing content available for pre-caching? I do not know the answer to that, but I would recommend you review the technology guide, and also once we know who our technology coordinators are, we'll make sure that you are logged into the WIDA AMS system and are able to install the software and test those types of things.
Okay, and then one more page to show you. Each state has a specific page that you can access where we will be putting out DC specific information and resources for you, and you can find that through this link right here. And we go to DC. And so this has contact information as well as the earlier slide we put up with testing dates here, which are currently last year's. We will be updating, oh, they're right here, sorry. So that's the same one that was on the slide earlier. And then it will also be updating soon with any events or professional development things we will be hosting for you. Okay. All right, so now we're going to get into the details of the actual physical administration of the test. And as we mentioned before, and some of the questions have raised, this is still an untimed test, and so there is no time limit. And the administrators can decide how many students to test based on the capacity of the computer lab and staff availability. There are recommendations for the speaking domain, as an earlier question was raised, that groups of no more than 3 to 5 students in the room so that the headset microphones don't capture other students' voices. And this is really something you as a test administrator or coordinator can decide based on what your space looks like and how many students can fit in a room spaced out enough so that they can all speak individually into the microphones. And so also students should be far enough apart so that they cannot easily read one another's screens. The recommendation is to have at least 2 to 3 computers between each student, or 4 to 6 feet apart. And then another thing about the online test is that different grade and proficiency levels can take the test in the same room at the same time. That's if they're using the online version. And for the paper-based test, the same grade, tier, and domain can take at the same time, and they have to be in the same grade and the same tier because the script is different for each of them. And so then general procedures, as mentioned earlier, the test order for the online test is important. And so it has to be first the listening test, then the reading test, and then either the speaking or writing test. Things to note: if the test session is interrupted for any reason, for example, a fire drill, students need to exit the test session online. And if it's the same day the student can return to the test, they can log back in using the same test ticket and resume where they left off. However, if the testing must be resumed on a later day, the student's test ticket must be unlocked, and this will be something that the technology coordinator will learn in their training, and it's outlined on WIDA AMS. And so then once the student is logged back in, the student can resume right where they left off. And then also note that students cannot go back to previous questions for listening, reading, and speaking. Students and test administrators can go back to a previous screen for the writing section.
I would say about like the distance students. So there was a question, can students sit closer together if you're using dividers? I would say use your best judgment. That would be an LEA level decision, what sufficient distance is to ensure test integrity is maintained. But just, use your discretion. So I'm seeing like a few what if questions, and I think, the what if questions, what if the power goes off? Can students can't log off? This is the first year this online test is being administered, and I'm not going to have answers for all the what if questions, but we will do our best to make sure that, that all of these types of technology questions are addressed. This was piloted for 2 years, so I think they've probably come across and resolved most of those. Another question, do the students need to take the entire writing test in the same session? And we're not clear on that. I think that would be something you'd definitely want to confirm in the test administrator guide, the manual, but I can actually make sure that we circle back on that one as well.
Okay, and now back to the administration procedures for the speaking test. So speaking prompts are not repeatable. The students can reread the question on the screen before recording their responses. And students with an IEP accommodation that allows a play repeat of a question, they do have the opportunity to listen to the speaking prompts one additional time. And students cannot record their speaking test responses more than once unless the student's recording was not captured or there was an interruption. Okay, and then this is just a side note. This won't happen until closer to the test window. It'll happen in February. But WIDA AMS does allow designated staff to add new students, including up to the day of the test. And students' names and information can be typed into the WIDA information AMS system. And note that if a student moves to a new district, the test coordinator should contact DRC customer support, and they can help you take care of that. So back to timing, again, it's not a timed test, but test administrators should use their judgment to allow students who are working productively the necessary time to complete each test domain. And domains may be administered across multiple days. However, and this actually will answer the question about the writing test, a single domain test should not be broken into separate administrations unless it is a student with accommodations. And then the table below, these are just recommended maximum times. Again, it's up to the test administrator's discretion to decide if a student needs more time than this.
Oh yeah, so that answers the question previously. The writing section should not be broken up.
Again, these recommended time windows are on the WIDA website for your reference. Okay, now we're going to get some more detail on accessibility and accommodations. So students with disabilities who cannot use a computer can take the Access for ELLs 2.0 paper-based test, but this must be included in their IEP or 504 plan. The paper-based test may be appropriate for students who need more intensive support, for example, a student who needs a human reader or students unfamiliar or unable to use technology. The online platform, as mentioned before, has more accessibility tools available to a greater number of students. And the accessibility tools in the online test are available to all students. and so they therefore do not need to be turned on or activated prior to the testing. And so those tools would be the highlighter, magnifier, color overlay, LiDGuide. There's also, as mentioned before, copy and paste properties that all students will be able to use. And then for accommodations, these are accommodations that do need to be activated based on a student's IEP or 504 plan. And for the access for ELLs 2.0, there are 3. So the first one is manual control of the test item audio. So this allows students to manually control playing of the listening, writing, and speaking test items where there are audio prompts. Then there's manual repeat of the test item audio. As mentioned before, students without an accommodation cannot repeat the audio. However, this accommodation allows for that one-time repeat. And then there's extended speaking test response time. Students are provided with up to twice the regular testing time to complete the speaking test. And again, there are no required time limits, so this is also something that's up to your discretion. Okay. And then some more details on accommodations by each test domain. So for the listening, there are headsets versus script reading, and so if a student requires a read aloud from an in-person human reader, the student must take the entire test in the paper-based format. They can't do just the listening test in the paper-based and do the rest online. For the reading, even if a student requires a read aloud accommodation, reading aloud for the reading test is not permitted because the reading domain tests a student's ability to read. And then the speaking test, the use of an alternative communication device or speech generating device, it cannot be used for the speaking test. And then for the writing test, if a student taking the paper-based test does have an accommodation to use a word processor and responds using the word processor, their responses must be transcribed by the test administrator. And so this is note if that student is taking the entire test in the paper-based format. And then for blank or scratch paper guidelines, for grades 1 through 3, planning space is provided in the paper test booklet. For grades 4 through 12, scratch paper is provided. The paper must be destroyed after the test. And this scratch paper is provided for both the online and paper-based test. And then in terms of graphic organizers, students cannot use graphic organizers. They can recreate their own on scratch paper, but no pre-printed organizers are allowed. Okay, and we are wrapping up. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me at my email address there, also to Katie, and we are asking you all to provide the contact information for your technology coordinator so that we can get you set up on the WIDA AMS platform. And so following this webinar, we're requesting if you could send an email to me at that above email address with your LEA name, the technology coordinator's name, and the technology coordinator's email.
So at this time, we'd love to, well actually, we have one more thing we wanted to plug here.
Okay, and then we are having a data analysis workshop on October 26th to the 27th, and so this will take place here at Aussie, and we are inviting you all to register and attend if you have not already.
The workshop is intended for teaching pairs, so it would be the ESL teacher and their content teaching pair who share the same students, and the goal would be for them to bring their student data and also use the Access score reports and to analyze them, and also bring a laptop. And it's intended to introduce participants to data skills that will use to apply those skills immediately on your current student data. So again, that's 2 full-day workshops, 2 full days from 8:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. and then it will be held at Aussie. The question is lunch provided? Unfortunately, it's not. I wish it was, but no.
And yes, you will have access to the presentation. It is recorded and we will post it on the Aussie website.
So I know most of you are the LEA level folks, but if you could get in contact with your school level teachers and find out if anyone is interested in participating. This is coming up very quickly. So I think it would be really beneficial. Everything that WIDA does is high quality, and I don't know if anyone was at the ELL Support Institute this summer, but I've only heard positive feedback about the presentations made by the WIDA folks, and I know that we can expect the same for this upcoming workshop. So with that said, I'd like to take it back to questions. So if you don't have any questions, you're welcome to leave. Thank you so much for spending this hour with us. And if you do have questions, we'll stay online for the next few minutes and address anything that comes up. So the question came, when do we expect to get the logins for the WIDA AMS? If you are the technology person, that you can expect that in the next week or two. If you are not the technology person, we'll collect that in February, and that's when we'll load the rest of the users in. So good question, where can we access this webinar in the future? I will show you the page on the Aussie site. I'm hoping most people are aware of it. We can just Google search it. This is maybe how it would be easiest for everyone to find it. So I always Aussie access for ELLs. And it takes you, so this will be the page where we're posting all of our access information. So we have here the 15-16 administration timeline, the home language survey. There are some other resources here that are helpful, and this is where we'll post the webinar. Question, can the technology coordinator be the same person as the testing coordinator? Yes, that's possible. I would just say that, the technology coordinator needs to have sufficient understanding of the technological pieces to install the software and ensure that it's running successfully in advance of the test administration window. So if the testing coordinator has that skill set, then awesome. That would definitely be permitted. Well, I hope that we've answered all your questions, and I hope that you'll start digging into all of the resources available. And, please feel free to reach out to us, like we've said, if you have any questions. And we're really excited about this new online assessment. I think it's going to ease the burden on LEAs and you know, we're really looking forward to a successful first year administering this. So I hope you are too.
Thank you very much. And please feel free to reach out if you have any other questions.